Hey, nobody's out there, right? Good. Anyway, I'm gonna say some weird personal shit. If you don't want to hear weird personal shit, just don't watch this. This isn't even gonna be interesting. I'm so tired. I'm so spacey. And I took all this melatonin. I keep taking melatonin to go to sleep early because I can't stand the sunset. The sunset is too depressing that I can't really function, and so I just want to go to sleep. And so if I take a lot of melatonin the next morning, I sleep, but now my brain is really fucking spacey. And so if I'm stupid without melatonin, boy, I'm really stupid now. I can barely finish a sentence right now. Get the point, Sean. Anyway, you shouldn't watch this. If anybody's watching this, if you're watching this to see like a bumbling, washed up, pathetic, hopeless guy, keep watching. But if you're watching for inspiration or to feel good, you shouldn't watch this. Or coherence. I'm not going to be able to say anything coherently, and I'm just extra. I feel basically dead. And I don't even want sympathy or anything. What am I doing? Probably no one's even watching this. I don't know. I'm just catering to some. I don't know what. I don't know. Just don't watch this. All right. So what do I have to say? I'm just as usual. I'm just trying to like figure out like what to do. As basically a completely hopeless, washed up, heterosexual man who is basically mostly dead, and I see like no good options. And so what I have been doing and what I'm gonna most likely do is just continue to grow old and die in this room. And so that's what I'm really gonna do. And so I'm basically trying to figure out like what's the best way to do that. Anyway, for like the last 2 years I was doing jiu-jitsu. And when I was doing jiu-jitsu the last 2 years, basically what I was doing is let's explain. Well, basically, like, long story short, a long time ago I had a job as a 3D modeler at game companies. But it wasn't good enough. I was like, I'm too weak and pathetic. Like, I'm too dysfunctional. I want to be like a stronger, braver man. And so I quit, being like, I'm not going to be able to have kids. Do you want to explain your life story? Well, basically, like, here's the main things I want to say. First of all, if anybody's watching this, I'll say the things that are relevant to possibly you. I don't even know who's watching this, but I'll use I statements. I'll say, I'm in this position. If you watch, there's this video by Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is trying to compete with Joe Rogan. He's like, we gotta get into the manosphere. The manosphere, basically. And this guy, Sean Galloway, is basically, or Scott Galloway, he says that these guys basically say that there's this situation where across America, basically, like, obviously a ton of the jobs have gone to China and India. China and India both have like 3 times the population of America, and now increasingly they can do all the same shit as America, and they can do it for less money. And so basically, just a lot of white men who used to have an automatic, like, white collar, I don't know, knowledge worker job or something. Just basically, there's a lot of disenfranchised men. Sometimes white men, but men just in their parents' basement. And this guy basically says that, like, there's just like the houses are 4 times more expensive than they were like 20 years ago. Wages are like the same. And basically this Donald Trump election was just the result of like a ton of like hopeless, disenfranchised, mostly young men, just without job opportunities. Like, they have no jobs, and because I guess they have no jobs, they have no sex. And so, like, I don't know, something crazy like 50% of men are like young men or something, or like incels or something. And I'm gonna just go ahead and say that I'm an incel now because just I've been trying to get laid for the last 2 years, and it's just like nothing. and the options are so fucking bad. But I'm like 45, so get the point. Well, basically, like, this is a situation across America, and so anyway, if you want to hear about that situation, you can listen to these guys. And these guys are basically like, there's some rich people who have houses and property, and they're like, sucks for there's just a lot of people like stuck at like dead-end jobs, either in their parents' basement or just in some rental situation. And these guys basically are saying like, you know, I guess the Democrats are like, we want to make it so any young man can potentially own a house, get married, and have kids. That's like, they think that should be like something that people should be able to do. But there's just this widened gap between the rich and the poor. And in a lot of cases, the gap between the rich and the poor is basically a gap between the rich and the young, or the old and the young. In a lot of cases, older people own property and stuff, and they have businesses or whatever, and they're sucking the fucking life out of the young people in some dead-end service job or rental situation. So anyway, as a broad generalization, that seems to be the case somewhat in a cynical point of view. And anyway, so if you want to hear about that, you can listen to these guys talk about that. When I look at these guys talk about that, I'm struck by how like they still don't seem to really like, well, I don't know, what am I saying? It doesn't seem like they really care very much. I don't know, what am I saying? Who knows? Anyway, what else is kicking around in my brain? I don't know. I'm trying to just remember a bunch of things I said. This has nothing to do with my life or anything. What else is kicking around in my brain? Just that, like, there's this thing now with video where when I'm looking at, nobody cares, but just record, when I'm looking at Gavin Newsom, I'm basically noticing that like Joe Rogan kind of, he has this attitude of like authenticity. He's like people resonate with authentic. Basically, if you can see somebody in video, you can see how they really feel, and sometimes their words and actions are not in line with how they really feel. And that's really obvious to me when I see somebody on video. When I see Gavin Newsom, I see somebody who's kind of like, obviously, you can tell he doesn't feel how he's acting and saying stuff. But actually, that's kind of a good thing. Like when you go to like a doctor, when they say, "I'm so sorry for your diagnosis, but we really care about getting your condition right," and they work on your foot or whatever. They don't care. The whole nature of like a service economy is like, people who don't care are going to act like they care and help you. And you don't want a world where people are like, "Let me tell you how I really fucking feel." You're just going to have a bunch of people selfishly saying, "Look at me, I'm good, you're bad." That's like, so Joe Rogan is basically like, he can do that because he's not really like he doesn't do some sort of work that renders a service for other people that he doesn't want to do. Joe Rogan's whole thing is like, I do what I want to do and I get paid for it. Well, most of the world is like not going to work like that unless, so what's my point? So basically, like, Gavin Newsom is just, he's never going to seem authentic if the whole thing about like, you know, good selfless people is that they're going to seem fake. If you go to some, they're faking niceness, but like, what's the point? Anyway, that's just, I have this feeling like he's never really going to appeal to those people. Basically, I feel like there's people who have like prefrontal cortex modes of existence. They're always going to seem fake, but they're going to be able to act and do a bunch of shit that like doesn't necessarily feel good, and it's going to seem boring or something like that. But you need those people right now because, like I said, like a lot of services and niceness, it is boring. It doesn't feel good. And if people just cater to their as a broad generalization, if people just exclusively cater to their limbic systems and amygdala, basically trying to make themselves feel good, it's not conducive to jobs or service to others usually. But then like all work and no play makes you a dull boy. So I figured out yesterday that basically there's a balance to that. There's a thing where basically I figured out yesterday that a lot of people today are basically stuck in a position where, because of artificial intelligence, they don't totally know, like, should I do my job? Should I go all in on my job? If you go all in on your job, and it's some boring dead-end job that's going to be replaced by machines. You might do that, and then in a few years it might be like, hey, guess what, your job's gone. And then maybe, this is kind of wishful thinking, but maybe it seems like increasingly there's starting to be what's called an attention economy, which is basically like, just get likes. Like, according to a lot of these people, or just Joe Rogan, really young people are basically like, that's their greatest currency. They just want likes and followers, and they think like, who cares about having money? And so I asked ChatGPT, and they said, yeah, like the way things are going, if more and more jobs are replaced by machines, it's likely that eventually there'll be some sort of world where just a lot of people either are forced to or decide to just go for likes. But that's going to necessitate somebody basically covering their expenses, like having universal basic income or something like that. But that's not guaranteed. Like, they might sort of, it seems like Donald Trump is trying to sort of like get rid of, nobody should watch this. Donald Trump's trying to sort of get rid of like Medicare, and like will cover your expenses for free type stuff. The Democrats are so basically, like, what am I trying to say? You know, people might really need jobs in the future, or they might become homeless, or it might be like, hey, you don't even have to work. You can just seek fun all day online. But I don't know. We don't really know. Basically, there's this X factor with artificial intelligence where people don't really know. So anyway, this has nothing really to do with my life. But if you want to hear about stuff like that, you can listen to that shit. Anyway, my situation basically is 45 years old. My attractiveness has basically completely evaporated. But nobody cares, but just for record, I was asking ChatGPT yesterday, is basically people's attractiveness, like, people look at people's face and their body and stuff like that, and is that if they say like that person's attractive or that person's not attractive, is that basically based off of like some sort of animalistic sense of like telling like how good is your ability to survive in the wild? Like, basically, do you have like good DNA that lends itself to thriving and surviving? And if they have like weak DNA, that's kind of a lot of what attractiveness is. And so I looked that up yesterday on ChatGPT over and over, and it said, yeah, that's kind of it. So basically, I've determined that looking back at my whole stupid life, I know that I have like deep-seated weaknesses that are totally evident in everything about me. Like I've known it my whole fucking life. Actually, really since puberty. I asked that too. They said that like at puberty, people have a certain amount of DNA as a kid, but then their DNA fully kind of blooms around puberty. And I just remember puberty just being like, oh, I suck. Like, I have some like shitty DNA that's not attractive to anybody that I would want to be with. And it's always been like that. And so I've had this thing in my stupid life, my whole basically since puberty, I was always thinking like, how do I get attractive enough that somebody I want to have sex with will want to have sex with me? And none of it really worked. I took steroids, I worked out, basically like for like the last 30 years, more than 30 years since puberty. A lot of what was on my mind is like, how do I have to work out? Do I have to take up bulimia? Do I have to get a nose job? How can I basically overcome how can I get more attractive? And I noticed I tried minor plastic surgery, I tried steroids, I tried weightlifting, I tried getting skinny. There was always kind of like this like shitty like weakness that everybody can kind of see, and I always like, I still suck. And I remember just always complaining about that thing, like, even if like nobody hot is ever gonna like me, there's like weakness like throughout the whole fucking package. Even if I talk, my like lame like dead voice is like, everyone's like, you're too weak, and everybody knows it, and I can't hide from it. Like I thought like, maybe if I take steroids I can get strong. There's still like this you can kind of fake it for a while, but people eventually like, I can see your like shitty, pathetic weakness stuff. And so I listened to like a lot of Jocko podcasts and stuff, and I thought maybe I can learn. Maybe if I take jiu-jitsu I can get strong and confident, or just be good in a women are attracted to you kind of way. Never worked. It was always kind of like, nah, you're still. And I know it. I know that like, so there was always this hopeless feeling like, even if I get like a good job, I can't get attractive for like, I'll never like myself. I'll always just be like, I still kind of suck and I'm a lame-o, and it's obvious. Basically like your genetics are kind of obvious to everybody and you can't change your genetics. And so I asked ChatGPT, I said like, so basically like to some degree, what happens is like a lot of people with bad genetics, weak genetics, just weak unattractive genetics, they oftentimes try to like get rich. You can compensate for it with richness. If you get rich, you can make a deal where you're like, I know you're hotter than me, but like, will you fuck me and have kids with me, even because you have better genetics, and I'll pay for the difference. And some people can do that. So when I was 30, I had like sort of an arrangement with somebody who basically had better genetics. And I just remember that like when I put my dick in that better genetic person, it felt so fucking good because my body was like, I'm getting into like a better doorway. My progeny will not be like crippled with pathetic weakness like me. And so I just remember that feeling. And then I was kind of like, no, like she doesn't even really like me. She just wants money. But maybe that was like as good as I could have done. Like maybe that I could ask like, so basically that's my conclusion. My conclusion over and over is like, if you have like shitty, wimpy genetics, if you settle for some other like weak, ugly person, the cycle continues, and then you get somebody like me, and eventually somebody has to get into like a better bloodline. And so until they have universal basic income, if you're a nerd, if you want to like, if you want the cycle of like patheticness to stop, you got to get into like stronger DNA, and kind of like everybody's trying to do that to some degree. And they want like better survival of their progeny. Now, at least in my case, I know deep down that I never really could have like, I thought like maybe if I knock somebody up, I'll be forced to sort of like pathetically be like a shameful, weak dad. And I'm not saying that was my brother's situation, but my brother basically, once you get somebody pregnant, it's kind of like, now you gotta raise your kid. And so kind of like for a while, for like the last like 10 or 15 years, like maybe I can just knock somebody up with better genetics and then be forced to get a job and forced to be a dad. But I figure like, if I really think about it, if somebody says, do you want to do all that? Do you want to do all those fatherly responsibilities? And I'll be like, no, like this all sounds like I can't handle all that stuff. I could be forced to do it, kind of like being pushed out of a plane on tandem skydiving, but I couldn't be, I would never have like I know that like I'm really weak and terrified at some like deep-rooted level that like a lot of guys are not. And so anyway, so basically like, I don't know, I guess the main thing I'll say over and over is that I can say conclusively in my life that I fucked up my life basically by not catering to my strengths. I've researched this over and over and over, and like just the data basically says that your best bet is to capitalize on your strengths. And a really common folly of a lot of men is to focus on their weaknesses, particularly thinking that it'll get them laid. They think like, oh, I don't have the good stuff that women want, but maybe if I fake it, I can grow into that. And so they try to become like a rock musician or like a stand-up comedian, or basically something that they're not genetically talented at. They're probably genetically talented enough to be like an accountant or like a chemist or something like that. Really common folly is like, I gotta be what the women want and the guys respect, and so they try to be some imitation cool guy. That's like a really common road to ruin. And so it's hard to just be yourself. You know, was it Horatio or Polonius? I think it was Polonius. I don't know. Basically, there's that quote in Hamlet where they said, "To thine own self be true. This above all else, to thine own self be true," which basically means like play the hand that you're dealt. If you're good at something genetically, even if it's not cool, just do that and tell yourself that's the best thing. There's no like best attribute. Just say like, I don't even care about that's shallow stuff. I like my chemistry or whatever. I'm passionate. Whatever the hell you're good at, be passionate about that and say that that's the best, and get a job with that. That's your best bet. And then try to get like a hotter person, I guess, or I don't know, whatever you're attracted to. Have a family, but don't like hate your genetics. I never could do that. I was always like, my genetics suck, and so I always tried to like fake my genetics. I tried to get like plastic surgery, and I took steroids, and I took jujitsu, and I took all this stuff where I'm like, look, like I'm a strong guy, and everyone's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, I know I'm not. It's in everything, but like it's my little, I have these little small teeth down here that's just like weakness. I have like a small mouth. I have like a weak chin. I have a big nose. I have there's all these things that just say you're not. Even my voice is like this, like not powerful, lame-o voice. Now my neck is all shriveled up. Basically, it's just like the weakness is just kind of through and through. And really, the only thing I was ever naturally good at, for some reason, I just have me and my genetically, my uncle, my brother, and me. We have like a good critical eye, and our boring, our ability to just do tedious, boring labor basically lends itself really well. Like I have a combination of like an ability. I have a boring, tedious nature, and I have like tenacity where I can do something that's boring that seems like it's not panning out for like really long periods of time. And then I have like a good critical eye, and I'm particularly obsessed with faces. That kind of lent itself well to doing this shit. And so this shit was the only thing in my life where people were like, hey, that's like really good. That's like really good. People like, I don't have to like pretend it's good. I don't have to read some spiel in the morning where I say, there's nothing good or bad. You can think that it's good. I don't have to do that with this. People who didn't even know me, they say, that's actually good. So like, I kind of should have just done that. But I couldn't handle it because I was just like, well, nobody's, like, I'm just so pathetic that like, nobody's going to be attracted to me, and then even if they're attracted to me, they're not. I'm not even going to be. I'm going to be like some pathetic lame-o dad, and I'm too weak. So I quit my jobs now. So I was like, I got to become a cooler, stronger, braver person, and I never really could become cooler, stronger, and braver. It never stuck. Like no matter how many push-ups I do, no matter how much forced socialization I did, as soon as I stop faking it, I'm just the same old lame-o, dead, pathetic person who can't make eye contact. So those weaknesses never really, basically everything I tried to do that was like fighting a weakness, it never really got good. It was always kind of like, it never stuck. And basically at 45, I've noticed that for the most part, the social people are pretty much always social. They were always social. The smart people, they were always smart. The beautiful people, they were always beautiful. They might lose it because of age or like drugs or something later, but basically like the good things are kind of seared into the genetics. And so it just seems like stupid to really waste a lot of time on your weaknesses. And that's been confirmed over and over on ChatGPT. Like basically ChatGPT says, yeah, the data says that like best bet for success is to focus on your strengths. And so some people, so basically that's what I should have done. And so I'm just, if no one's watching this, it doesn't matter what I say. But if you are watching this, I can say that's one thing I really learned in my failure of life is just every time I ever tried to work on my weaknesses, it was basically just a kind of like fruitless period where people are like, what the fuck are you doing? And it never really panned out in terms of like job or woman liking me. And every time I ever just kind of like focused on my strengths, there was kind of like opportunities and stuff. But I was always kind of like, but I kind of suck. Like nobody's ever gonna, I'm never gonna be hot. I could never handle the idea that I would never be like a hot guy, like really sexy to women. I was like, can't I get hot? Can't I get sexy? No, can't overcome the genetics. And then like, can't I ever get like cool, like a guy that like men really respect? No, I'm always like, every time I try to do that, I was like, not really. Like if there's like some sort of like war situation, deep down everybody's gonna know like that guy's gonna like fall apart. Like that guy Sean's like, don't look to him for like real like core strength type shit. That guy's got some like deep-seated weaknesses, and it's just in my genetics. It's in my brother, it's in my dad, it's in my mom. The whole fucking genetics are just kind of like, we have these like weaknesses that are just kind of in the genetics. So what's the point? That's my conclusion. Is just like, if you have weak genetics, do your nerd thing, whatever the fuck it is, and then like maybe you can fuck somebody with better genetics, and your kid will be like a little less unattractive. And so that's your best bet. Hard for guys to do that. Sometimes guys do that. So basically, that's my conclusion. That's been confirmed over and over by data. And then also just realize that like even that today is hard to do because China and India are taking a lot of the fucking jobs, and so a lot of people are just stuck in their parents' basement playing video games. According to this, that's like all over the fucking country. And so what's the point? I don't know. Maybe some people are now like forced to just do something they're not good at just because there's no fucking jobs in what they're good at. And so what's the point? I don't know. Just that's my analysis over and over. And so I'm already kind of fucked. I'm like 45, and so now what? Anyway, I just want to keep talking about this phenomenon. Nobody cares, but there's this guy called John McAfee. John McAfee is really, he was kind of an interesting guy to me. I'm like, I relate to that guy. John McAfee, just for the record, he's smart and nerdy in a way that like he basically kind of looks like my dad. He looks like my dad and he looks like my uncle, and I feel like I kind of like, basically he's a genetic nerd who like under the right conditions he kind of fancied himself as like, I can become like a cool guy, but he really like he fancied himself as a cool guy, but all you have to do is really look at him and go like, that's a nerdy, he's kind of like, what am I trying to say, he's not cool and sexy in the way that he wants to be, but he thought because he had like a handlebar mustache or something, just he has like a little bit of features where he probably thought like, I kind of look like some like Western cowboy guy from movies, but not really. Like as soon as you hear him talking, you're like, you're not really like that. And so my brother kind of pointed this guy out, and so I'm like, oh, he thought like, I'm a cool guy. What's more, basically wanted to be like a cool guy. And also I think he just realized a similar thing, which is just that even if you get good at your nerd thing, it sucks to just know that like the men are, even if you get like, if he became like the best antivirus like cybersecurity guy in the world, but he wasn't satisfied with that. He's like, the men still disrespect me. They can see that like, they're like, you're still kind of a dopey nerd that's not attractive to women. And so he's like, God damn it. And so he basically in the last part of his life, he just said, fuck it, like I want women to like me and I want respect from the men. And so he got hopped up on steroids and methamphetamine, which is basically like Adderall and steroids. And I did that too. Nobody cares, which is a record. When I was 32, I was like, fuck it, I want to get strong and I want to be awesome and I want respect from the men, and I look kind of like that actor guy. Like maybe I can become like that. So anyway, he got all hopped up on this stuff. And so basically he did this like long charade where he's like, he's like, I know you think that I'm like a nerdy cybersecurity wizard guy, but no, look, I'm a badass cool guy. And so he basically did that for like a long time. He made this video where like he showed himself with John McAfee, where he showed himself basically like he made this video where he says like, I'm a sexy guy, I make the women wet with desire. Basically he just couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand being a nerd and he wanted to be like a cool guy. And so he basically became, he was like an imitation cool guy, and he's like, many women desire me. And so he made these videos where he basically, so then he in later life he married an overweight ethnic chick, and then he just had this charade where he's like, I'm a legendary guy, I make the women wet with desire, and I am a strong badass cool guy. But then basically he just had a lot of ruin. Like people were like, I don't really buy your charade, you're like an old nerdy guy. And he's like, no, goddammit. And so anyway, basically his drug fueled, he was hopped up on drugs, and then he just did a lot of stupid shit and a lot of showing off. He did like a ton of showing off, and he just was drunk on showing off. And some people bought his bullshit. Some people said, you're a legend, you're such a cool badass guy, but deep down they're like, it's kind of a drug-fueled lie. And then what? Then he got put into a jail in Spain, and I guess I would imagine he didn't have access to his drugs, and so when he wasn't full of meth and testosterone, he had to come back. His genetics were still there to roost, and he just seemed like this kind of, shell of a man, which was, a smart, diligent, above average, intelligent guy with a talent for things that related to software, but it wasn't sexy, and it wasn't like that. There he is, like there's the shell of like his actual attributes, and you're like, well, he looks like smart, noble, wise, crafty, but not sexy, studly, appealing to women. And so and then he just hung himself. He just hung himself in jail because he was like, this sucks. And so, what's your point, Sean? Just basically, I've concluded that that's a folly of like a lot of dudes that I've known. Is like, there's dudes who like they're just, but like I really relate to the dude because he basically like he kind of figured that like, even if I do my nerd thing, I'm still not going to be appealing. I'm still not going to be good. I'm still not going to be appealing to women or respectable to men. And so he's just like, God damn it, I want. It's kind of like, what's the point? I would imagine. I'm just extrapolating, but it's kind of. It reminds me kind of there's that guy in the second Star Wars thing where he's like, the lady's like, you're not all powerful, and he's like, I should be, God damn it. And so he kind of was like, I want to be a sexy, cool, studly guy. And so he tried to just create all this content, depicting himself as like a studly, cool guy who makes the young women wet with desire. And he just constantly pumped out content that put out that image, but it was all kind of bullshit. And it was just like, he just had a lot of money because of his antivirus stuff. But if you just listen to him on interviews for like a little while, and you're like, he's not really like that. And so what's my point? I'm convinced that that's just that's a I don't know if it's a common human folly, but that I definitely did shit like that. And it's kind of stupid, because eventually, once whatever you're like pumping out in terms of fakery, it's not going to be sustainable. Eventually, the fakery, when one way or another, when the fake shit wears off, you're just going to be left there with your natural genetics. And so you should probably just like build a life upon the natural genetics, because otherwise it's just going to be a ton of shit you're going to have to do, and a ton of like basically just bolstering of your weaknesses that just like it's not reliable. As soon as you stop that, it's just going to be like, well, that's the real you is kind of like deep down there all the time. What's the real you is like your genetics. Anyway, what's the point? Just basically, like, I can just say that over and over. It's like, that was always a mistake that I made, and I just think it's like common human folly. I relate to this guy, but this guy's a much more extreme version of the same kind of folly. And so what's your point? I don't know, just that's some observation that I'm continually fascinated with. Anyway, so now I'm kind of like, I'm just basically stuck in my parent. The real situation can be described by these guys. These guys basically diagnosed my situation, which is a situation across America, which is just that there's a ton of mostly men, but women also. Basically, mostly younger people. I'm kind of too old to even really be in this situation, but there's a lot of young people basically stuck in their parents' basement doing some internet stuff. They're being preyed upon by video game companies and social media companies who have them basically pinned down. They're like, don't try to go out and socialize, don't try to get a girlfriend, just hang out and do like Discord, Twitch, Kick, YouTube, and that's better. It's better. And meanwhile, there's a few tech people who are just capitalizing off of there's people who are able to have houses and wives and families, but they're kind of capitalizing off of the young people. There's young people, particularly young men, who are just like being fed like video games and social media content, and just kind of like, don't worry about real stuff. Here's some like digital bullshit that it's easier, it's better. And so these guys would say that if you want like a real wife and family, you got to like break away from the YouTube, the Kick, the video games, and find a real job and a real woman. And so I always say that, like, if you want those things, just know that like if no one's watching this, it doesn't matter what I say, but if you're watching this, just know that we're all kind of like frogs. There's frogs in a boiling pot, and there's a comfortable warm boiling pot where they say that you can boil a frog and they won't jump out if you just kind of boil it slowly. And so a lot of people are basically in some kind of boiling pot, which amounts to like comfortable digital dopamine hits in video games, social media. I'm doing it too. This every time I make one of these videos, there's basically big tech companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook, which basically run these. Like, this platform is owned by, I think Twitch is owned by Amazon, right? Basically, there's big tech companies who are just like, don't go out into the real world. Just here's a little dopamine hit, and you can. And they're just gonna keep people down for the count. It's not like necessarily a totally intentional thing, but it's just around the whole fucking world. And so basically these guys say, like, you got to get out of there. If you can, like, get out and try to get a real job and try to get a real girlfriend, because eventually people just get old. They get old, and I've already gotten old. I've spent like 8 years in here getting digital dopamine hits. But at least in my case, um, I'm certain that I never really could have. I never really could have been a functional adult man with like a dad, because I know I just have these like I'm basically always like freaked out, and I have like deep-seated weaknesses where I just kind of hate myself, and I'm like, this guy sucks, and it doesn't matter like what I do. I always know that like I can just see it. I've seen it ever since I was in puberty. Like I know that I'm like weak at some sort of like deep-rooted level that just I can never overcome the weaknesses, and people know that too. They look at me and go like, weak, pathetic, lame-o, nerd, like not attractive guy. And I'm like, I know, and I know like even if somebody said like, hey, here's a wife, here's a house, you want to do it? I'd be like, I can't do all that. I'm terrified and I can't function as like a social being, and I don't even really. I just want to kind of hide at a screen, and I've always kind of wanted to like hide at a screen or hide at a desk or hide at some drawing, and so I'm just going to keep doing that to the grave. And so basically the name of the game is like how to do that, that's what I can do. What I can do really, and what I have done, is hide at a screen in a like a comfortable way. And so the question, so basically I had all these like little, nobody should listen to this, but I had all these like little incentives that kept me going for like a long time. I would find like little ways to like dangle some prize where I'm like, keep going, Sean, like keep going, it's gonna be good later. But those have all basically like evaporated. Like basically a lot of the like the last 8 years I tried to like fire myself up by being like, we're gonna get like a game art job, just keep doing game art. And I'm like, there's no game art jobs for me, I'm too subpar, and I'm too freaked out. I can't really handle that. And then I'm like, okay, let's try to like be attractive. We're gonna get attractive to women. And it's like everything I tried to like get attractive to women, it's like, can't do that. Nobody's really attracted. I tried steroids, I tried jiu-jitsu, I tried like active listening, and just it's never really just the weaknesses are kind of always there. And then the options are just worse and worse and worse. Eventually there'll be some, anyway, I don't want to be mean, but basically it's just over. It's like totally over. And so I've run out of like just incentives to get me up and fired up in the morning. This morning I was lying in bed. This has been like, there's been a week of this. There's been a week of like, basically like I can't wait to go to sleep. And then when I go to sleep, when I wake up in the morning, it's like I don't want to like get up. Like basically every morning for like the last week, nobody should listen to this, but every morning for the last week, I'm just lying there being like, I don't want to get up. There's nothing good anymore. And so anyway, I was lying in bed this morning and I tried to get up. I've been trying to get up at 4, and I'm just like, I don't want to do it. There's no good stuff anymore. And then I don't believe my little bullshit like it's gonna be good later. I used to have a lot of like, it's gonna be good later, let's get fired up, let's get do stuff. I don't believe those anymore. And so so eventually now the sun rises. When the sun rises, it's too bright to really sleep anymore. And this morning there was some little voice in my head that said, let's get some dermal filler and Botox. If we get some dermal filler and Botox, that was the one thing that sort of like got me up out of bed. And so I guess, what am I trying to say? Basically, I don't know what to do to like, I don't know how to find joy from 45 till death, and I've run out of ideas. I quit jiu-jitsu, and that took away a ton. Basically, for the last 2 years, I was getting like a little dose of feel good by basically having physical contact with young men. As long as I went to jiu-jitsu, and as long as I only trained with training partners who were worse than me, I could feel like, oh, I'm a strong man. But it was all bullshit. It was all like, I'm not really strong. I was just in the weenie class fighting weenies. As soon as I fought like a big person, I was like, I'm not good. And I'm really not good. I'm not physically good. I'm not brave. It doesn't take much for me to be reminded of that. And so so what's the point, Sean? Basically, like, but it's like at some sort of base level, just having contact with like young men. I'm not gay, but it was enough to like keep me motivated. But it was basically just like a hot tub, and it took so much time. Just basically working out and going to jiu-jitsu. It was never gonna lead to like a girlfriend or a job, but it was enough to sort of like give me some heat. Like it was like I felt fired up, but it was all a delusion. It was a delusion that like I can become attractive to like young women. It was never really, but it got me up and doing stuff. Just getting up and doing stuff was enough to like feel, to just, but it was all bullshit. What's the point? So basically, like, I quit jiu-jitsu because I was like, this is kind of bullshit. None of these people like me. It's all kind of fake. I'm just fighting from my butt, and it doesn't even translate to real life. But it was like a dose of like human contact, and it just got me doing something. And then I tried to make sculptures again, and then like I applied to 2K Games, and they actually like they didn't immediately reject me. They waited for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then they said, after a lot of consideration, we decided not to hire you. And I was like, fuck, that's what I really want. That's what I really like love, is like if I could work at 2K Games or someplace like that. That would be like, I actually like, there's no faking. There's like, I really do love that shit. Not necessarily, just some company like that. And so then now I'm just sitting here like, well, let's do that. And I'm like, well, probably no one's gonna hire me. And so basically I just kind of flip-flop between that. I tried to make a bunch of, like, if I try to be myself and cater to my strengths, I already kind of fucked that up. And there's no it seems like there's no jobs. I've been sitting in here applying to jobs. Even if I get a job, it's some sort of like contract, not high pay, like not good job. And then I'm like, and then even if I get that, I can't get a mate. Like even if I get a job, I can't get a woman that I'm attracted to. And I'm only really attracted to like, I guess basically like, I'm basically like almost my whole life, basically like, I guess I'm like almost like just not really into women that much. Like I'm into women, I'm not gay, but I only really liked hot white chicks. And then if I had somebody who wasn't like that, I'm like, I don't really like you that much. And so it's always kind of like, even if I get a job, I can't get somebody hot enough. Even if I get them hot enough, they're gonna know that it's just because they're hot, and they're gonna want money. So just, I never could have won the fucking game. And so what's the point? Just, I don't really know what to do now. I don't know what to do anymore. My incentives are gone. My eyesight has dwindled. My looks have deteriorated so much that like I'm just totally out of ideas. So I just keep rambling here. I tried reading about the electromagnetic spectrum, and like that's actually kind of fun. If I just do that, it's just passing the time.